Hey everyone, today I want to show you my insulator collection, and my wife is going to ask me some questions about insulator collecting. But first I want to show you what insulators were used for. Insulators were used on telegraph, telephone, and power lines. On the poles, they were used to insulate the wires from the electric current going to the ground. As you can see, some poles had many insulators on them. Here's an old power line. And here's a telegraph pole from the Civil War. As you can see, they were all had insulators on them, and they kept the electric current from passing through the pole to the ground. Insulators were used all over the world. They made them in glass, porcelain, rubber, plastic, and there was thousands of different ones made, and all different types and styles were invented for pretty much the same purpose, just to keep the electric current from running from the top of the pole down to the ground. But there's all different kinds, all different colors. Some of the glass colors were made intentionally along with the porcelain ones to signify different power lines from telephone lines. Some, like the glass, were used like recycled glass, and they came in lots of different colors. Some of the porcelain ones, like these red ones here, were made in England, and they were used to mark power lines from, say, the white insulators they used on poles for the telegraph lines. So I'm gonna have my wife take over and ask me a few questions about insulator collecting.
All right.
All right.
What got you started collecting insulators, and how old were you when you started collecting?
When I was about 10 years old, I started collecting. My mom had antiques all over the house, and some of the things she had were insulators. And I also, when I walked to school or when I was out playing around, we had a railroad track behind my house, and I used to walk along it. And I used to find broken insulators in the fields that were plowed up by the farmers, or some of the poles were still standing. And I used to see the insulators on them, and I just got started. I used to ride my bicycle all over the place looking for them. They were all over. They were along the railroad tracks, old dirt roads and farms, and just anywhere I would go, I'd find insulators. So it was a lot of fun going and looking for them. And then I found out some were, pretty valuable. And then I started finding some that were different colors, and I always like colored glass, and I like colored glass bottles too, if you want to show them some of my bottles here. I've been collecting bottles and digging in old dumps and stuff, looking for them along old roads since I was a kid also, and they just kind of came together at the same time. So I started collecting insulators. When I was a kid, I guess one of the big inspirations to me to collect was there was a guy in Genoa, Colorado he owned the Genoa Tower, which is a tourist destination that was built, I think, in the 1920s or 30s. And if you climb to the top, you can look and see, I think it was 6 states you could see from the top of the tower. But this guy bought it years later, and he was an amateur archaeologist, and he had lots of Indian artifacts, arrowheads, and old tools and guns, old bottles, and he also had old insulators everywhere. His place was full of antiques and artifacts, and he had all different kinds and colors. And in one window, he had a whole window full of cobalt blue insulators, like this one, and I thought it was pretty amazing. And one of the first My very first purple insulator my grandmother bought me was from the Genoa Tower. So I've had that since I was probably 11 years old. So it's special to me. But my mom, she had lots of insulators. This was one that she had and she gave to me when I was a kid. It's a telephone insulator for long distance telephone lines and still has the original copper wire on it, which is neat. And the railroad line where I lived in Colorado had a telegraph line on one side and then it had a power line on the other side. But the older line, the railroad was built in the 1870s, and I used to walk along the plowed fields and where the poles used to be, and I would dig up the insulators, or they would already be dug up, and I would find some from the 1880s or really early insulators like this one, and see it has dates on it from the 1870s, patent dates, and I just thought they were really neat. And then later on, after I moved from Colorado, I moved to Texas, and there was two big railroad lines not too far from where I live, so I would ride my bike for miles, like 10, 15 miles, to go to different towns and walk the railroad tracks for many miles and then ride my bike back with my backpack full of insulators. But I used to find different ones in Texas too. Like I found this green one here along the Santa Fe Railroad line. And I found a few of those. Here's one of the oldest insulators that was used for the B&O telegraph in Texas along the Santa Fe Railroad. I found a handful of these in aqua and green. Me and my friend found some when we were teenagers. Before we could even drive, we rode our bicycles out here and found these along the old railroad line. So those are neat. Those are from the 1880s, the very first insulators used along the railroad line there. And I found lots of other insulators. Eventually I moved back to Georgia where my family is from here, and I used to walk the Georgia Railroad line. It ran from Atlanta to Augusta, and I found some of these before the poles were cut down on the old poles that were abandoned. This one's from the 1880s. It's called a blob top. Still has the original wire on it, old iron wire. And I found other ones like this one's called a bullet. It has December 19, 1871 patent date on it. I found a few of these, and I dug some up too along the railroad line. I found this one, my friend Ken Roberts, in near Savannah in a swamp along the railroad line. It's a pennyquick beehive from the 1880s. It's full of bubbles. We almost died out there. We almost got lost in the swamp, so that one's a fun story. And what else? You got any questions for me?
Well, what are some of your first insulators?
Let's see.
You answered some of those questions, but
I showed you some of those, but let's see. Well, I think I pretty much showed you. Let's see. Here's some porcelain. These are some of the very first insulators I ever found along the Union Pacific Railroad there close to my house in Colorado. These were used for the power lines. I also found this sign along that power line. I was probably about 11 years old when I found that Union Pacific Railroad sign. So that was the first. I like high voltage signs also. That was the first sign I ever found when I was a kid. My grandfather used to go insulator hunting with me, and we found lots of different ones, like this Lynchburg here along the L&N Railroad line. When I was probably 10 or 11 years old, one of the first times I went insulator hunting, I would come to Georgia in the summer times, and my grandfather took me along the railroad line in his 66 Impala, and we filled up the floor and the floorboards and the seats and stuff, clothes baskets full of insulators from the linemen went along the railroad line and threw the cross arms off some of the poles, and they'd be at the bottom of the poles, and we would just unscrew the insulators because they weren't used anymore, and we'd bring them home and clean them up. So I really enjoyed that. And my sister used to take me insulator hunting, and she also would give me a lot of old bottles when I was a kid, like the purple ones here and stuff. So I've had a lot of those. Or this bottle from Savannah. I've had that since I was a kid. My sister bought me this.
It's pretty.
Yeah. So a lot of these are sentimental to me just because I found them with my family or with friends. What else?
What's some of your favorite finds? Whether insulator hunting or thrifting.
This is one of my favorite finds. I found it with my friend Jeffrey Kramer on a power line. I think it was built in like 1907 in South Carolina. We found a few of these, but this is one of my favorites. I really enjoyed hunting along that line. This was made by the Akron Insulator Company in Ohio. I really like the glaze on it and the style. It's pretty neat. Let's see here. Here's a nice yellow-green Lynchburg I found along the L&N Railroad with my grandfather. We found a few of these in a rail yard, and we had a lot of fun. The poles were abandoned, and I would knock these off with an insulator picker pole, and my grandfather made me a pole with an old pillowcase on the end to catch the insulators with, like a net, and it worked really good. So I really enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun, and this means a lot to me. This green beehive here, if you want to show them, I found that in Warm Springs, Georgia, where President Roosevelt, where he died in Warm Springs, but there's no telling, how many times he passed by on his train, probably going to Warm Springs when he was there. Let's see. Here's another one I found with my grandfather along the L&N Railroad. It's a CD 162.1 Brookville in a nice shade of green. We found a few of these, so that one's sentimental to me. Let's see here. I showed you some of the other ones that I found already. Let's see. I found this one with my friend Jeffrey Kramer in South Carolina. It's like a mushroom. We found a few of these. That was a fun line to hunt along.
Which one did you find on our first date?
Let's see. This one here. It's a beehive. It's a bee beehive and a nice teal green with amber in it. And do you remember the time we went insulator hunting along the Central Georgia Railroad line and found these in the woods? Remember, you had thorns and weeds all in your hair.
Yeah, I remember that.
What else?
How many different countries do you have insulators from in your collection?
Oh, that's a good question. I have them from England and Canada, and of course, the United States. This one's from Italy, this green one here. Let's see. This red one here is from Poland. Here's another one from the United Kingdom. This pretty cranberry red one here. I've got them from, like this little one here. This one's from Australia. Along with this purple one here is also from Australia.
That one's
This
pretty.
pretty dark blue one here is from Russia. This one right here is from Italy. Along with, let's see, where's it at? This one down here is also from Italy. This blue one. I have them from, let's see, I can't find it now. I have some from Japan. This one's from Portugal. This pretty blue one here in the window is from Argentina.
I like that one.
Yeah, it's a really hard one to find. And I've got them from lots of places. Along with my signs, I collect high voltage signs also. Like this one here is from France. But I'll show you the signs more later. But what else?
What is a dream insulator that you wish you could have one day?
I've got a few. I always wanted one of these Cobalt California Electric Works insulators that were used in California in the late 1870s. They're worth about $10,000 or more. If I could find any one, it would be this green Boston screw top. It was made in Boston, but they were used on telegraph lines here in Georgia. They're really rare. This is the only green one known. And it supposedly sold for close to $40,000, but
Wow.
I'm not sure. But yeah, it's the only one known, so maybe one day I'll find one in an antique mall. Let's see here. I'd love to find one of these opalescent insulators. I have a different type of opalescent insulator in the window if you want to show them. It's on top there.
This one?
This one right here.
Oh yeah, this one.
Yep.
I like that one.
Or I would love to have a purple blob top. A couple were found here in Georgia along a railroad line. That's always been one of my favorites. Porcelain, I would love to find one of these. They were used on an interurban line in Denver, Colorado from around like 1907, I believe. They're really rare, so it's probably the top porcelain insulator I'd love to find now, but it's probably just a dream to find one. What else?
All right, I guess you can tell us about your signs.
All right.
There's lots to see.
Yep, I have signs from all over the United States and the world. My favorite ones have skull and crossbones on them. These were used in old steel mills and are some of the very first high voltage signs used in the United States. We've done research and some were being used as early as the early 1900s, possibly even late 1800s, but by the 19-teens, these were used in a lot of the old steel mills, and they made a lot of different kinds, but they didn't use very many of them, so they're all really rare. So I really like this one here.
That one's nice.
That one's really cool. And this Electrica sign up here, only a couple of those have been found so far. That's probably my favorite high voltage sign, but I like this one here too. These were used a lot in Michigan on old substations, probably from the 1930s. And this sign down here, this one's from India. That's kind of neat, with the skull and crossbones. And some of these here are all from California. All these right here. California used a lot of different colored signs, and the climate out there kept the signs in good condition from rusting away like some other places like here in Georgia where it's so humid everything rusts away so quickly. I really like this sign and the high voltage that's on it. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I like that one.
It's really cool. It's the only one I've ever seen. And here's another sign from the United States Steel Corporation. I love the skull and crossbones on it. This one right here is from Belgium. Probably from around World War II. It's the only one I have that has someone with a pole with insulators getting electrocuted with a skull and crossbones. Everybody loves those. And I have lots of other signs here, just all different kinds. This blue one down here is from Russia. There's some more down here. They were used in the United States in different places. This one right here is really rare. It's probably from an old mill in Ohio, I believe, from the 19 teens. It's a Stonehouse sign, and it's just a regular metal sign instead of being porcelain, so it's amazing it survived. It has all the different languages for danger with so many different immigrants working together.
I didn't know that.
Yep. People from, immigrated from all over Europe and different places and worked together in the factories back then. They all spoke different languages, so they had to tell everyone to be careful not to get electrocuted. Let's see. These are some of my favorite signs. I like that on that sign from Ohio. That's pretty neat. There's some more. The one on the bottom there in the middle is from Florida Power and Light Company. Here's another one of my favorite insulators. It was used on
Don't mind the dust.
a power line in New York, and Michael Spadafora hunted the line and found the pieces and glued it all back together, so it's really neat. Look how big it is.
It's big.
Yep. So it was made by Thomas, probably from like 1906 maybe.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. Well, is there any other questions?
No. I think you have a couple more signs over here.
Yeah, we found that stop sign together when they were tearing down an old mill in Alabama.
When we were dating?
Yep.
Yeah.
Showing my pinwheel up here.
Here's the rest of his signs on the door.
There's my pinwheel from the side pins that they used on telephone lines with porcelain insulators, porcelain ponies.
I like the northern sign.
I found that on an old conveyor machine in the woods by the railroad tracks that they would use to load boxcars on trains. It was just left in the woods and the sign was still on it. Here's a light switch cover you had made for me of a old picture from when I was a teenager, probably about 14, insulator hunting along the Santa Fe railroad line. Here's some of my odds and ends. I like radio lightning arresters and radio strains, radio standoffs, and all kinds of anything old electrical porcelain that's colorful. I like Johnny balls and light switches, light sockets, a a lot of this stuff, like the light sockets, are from the 19 teens. The lightning arresters and radio strains are from the 1920s and 30s. There's a lightning rod insulator that's porcelain. Let's see. Here's some more of mine. Here's a Provo that was used on a line in Pennsylvania. Here's a new Lexington Lily Shell early multi-part insulator. This is one of my favorites and very sentimental to me. Jeffrey Kramer gave it to me as a wedding gift that he found. Beautiful turquoise New Lexington multi-part. There's a clear Montana stacker. Here's my insulator robot I made. There's a Cooley and an Ohio brass from California, Lily Shell. The Thomas. So that's that. All right, let's see. There's just an overview of some of my shelves that me and my wife made together. Let's see, I'll show you a couple more of my favorites. This is one of my very favorites I got from Rob Jackson. It has someone's entire handprint. They left it on the insulator. 4 fingers, and even on the inside there's a thumbprint. So it has someone's whole handprint that was made over 120 years ago. They're long gone, but they left something behind. It'd be neat to know who did it, but that's one reason I like to collect porcelain insulators. You find people's fingerprints on them a lot, and some of the glazes are really neat. Don't you like some of these, Shuggy, with the...
Yeah, I like the brown glazes.
Yeah, some of these are almost like
the crude
art projects, you know, instead of being what they were made for, is just insulators to sit up on a telephone pole. They have a lot of character. Some have really neat runny glazes on them. Those are my favorites. Let's see, I really like this one here too. It's a transformer for doorbells that was made during the 19 teens, but I love the blue glaze on it. It's really beautiful. Let's see, I really like this one here too. It's a 2-tone glaze. One side's dark blue and the other side's light blue, and it's like almost split right down the middle. It's pretty neat. Here's a Harlow Claw. These are made in glass and porcelain. The glass ones, there's about 3 different sizes they were made in. The porcelain, there's just one size, and all of the porcelain ones were found in Pennsylvania years ago. This is a Perky patent. It was made so you wouldn't have to tie the wire off. You just slid it in through the top there and twisted the insulator, and it was supposed to hold the line wire without having to tie it on there, but it didn't really work out too well. Most of them were found not far from where the inventor lived in Washington State. I love this teal green one here. I got it from Rig Solar. It's one of my favorite ones. This blue transposition I got from Elton Gish. There's just lots of all different types here. There's not many of those known. This one came from not far from Nashville, Tennessee. It's got a wonderful glaze on it. This one came from Tacoma, Washington. It's got a beautiful glaze on it, early Thomas. Another blue transposition. I just like all the different colors and styles. Like this Mickey Mouse that was found in Washington State. This one here was found in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, with a few others in a power transformer house that's still there. I think there's still more in there from what I've heard. I like these a lot. They're called stovepipes, but I just like all the different shapes and colors. I always have. I don't know why, just they've always fascinated me. So there's another electric sign. I love those. That's from an old steel mill. Those are my favorite. But I guess that's it, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'll make more videos in the future of different insulators in my collection. All right.